Oh my gosh, Bridget, I am so excited to bring you back on the Clare podcast again. Thank you for coming back on.
Oh, it's great to be here. It's great to chat again.
We were just chatting about Bridget's huge list of accomplishments. So I'm going to do a quick intro to her and then we'll dive into our chat. And I'll also link to our first conversation because that was a really awesome podcast episode. That must have been a few years ago now, I'm guessing. I'll pop the link to that as well. But look, Bridget is the founder of Biddy Tarrot, which is a 7-figure business. I would say if you're not the largest online tarot company in the world, it must be right up there. She has empowered millions worldwide to trust their intuition and access their inner power. Your business, Biddy Tarot, was honestly the first tarot company that I was ever introduced to. I go on Biddy Tarot all the time looking at what cards mean. And the reason why you're on the podcast today is to chat about your brand new book. So Bridget's also a best-selling author of Everyday Tarot. And today she's got a new book that we're going to be talking about, which is Intuitive Manifesting. Welcome back.
Yay. Oh, look, here it is. Finally, actually just got the real legitimate book. So this is really exciting as well.
Oh, well, huge congratulations. I mean, I know firsthand how hard it is writing a book. How did you find this journey compared to the first time that you wrote your book?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I actually think when I was writing intuitive manifesting, then intuitive manifesting was definitely at play because it was a lot easier this time writing this book. And really the experience of it was I wanted to be able to put into words what I've been doing throughout my whole life. And that is manifesting from a place of deep intention, of alignment, of purpose, and of course, from a place of action. And that's really what inspired me to write Intuitive Manifesting. Now, the bit where I was like, oh, and intuitively manifested, it was actually just a really smooth process to bring this book to life. Originally, I was just going to do a short class on it for my community members. And then that quickly turned into a 6-week online course. And I thought, yeah, there's a lot here that I am really ready to share. And so then I thought, well, let's just put it into a book. And, here we are. We've got this gorgeous book coming out on October 22nd. And really, it is kind of the essence of everything that I do when it comes to manifesting, because I've tried all of the traditional manifesting techniques and it's a little bit hit and miss. Sometimes it works really well, other times I end up going like, oh, is that it, or kind of giving up halfway or feeling discouraged. But with this more intuitive manifesting approach, it's been a lot more about connecting into what I truly desire, what is aligned for me, for my highest potential, and then birthing that into the world in a way that is co-creating with the universe. It's very different to that kind of like have goal, must like work very hard towards goal until I get goal. It's a bit more about being in flow and really trusting your intuition along that path.
Oh my gosh, how fantastic. I can't wait to get my hands on a copy. I've actually had my hands on a copy at our photo shoot that we did for it, but I can't wait to read it and learn more about it. I wanted to ask though, when you're talking about intuitive manifesting, what is the coolest thing you have manifested in your life?
Oh, well, actually so many things and really this entire like lifestyle. But one of the really neat things was back in 2017, or I guess it was 2016 at that time. And my husband and I were like, we were living in Melbourne. We'd been born and bred in Melbourne. And we started to feel that like it's time for a change. And we knew that we wanted to move to a completely different place. And we had our eyes set on here on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland. And so we flew up, we had like 48 hours, kids with grandparents, flew up here, went and saw like 10 different houses. Short story, ended up at that final house, walked in, I'm like, man, this is it. This is the dream house. Like, oh my God, chills, right? And what really like was the icing on the cake is I got to the back room and there in the back room was a deck of tarot cards. I'm like, oh, thank you, universe, for showing me that this is the place that we need to live. Anyway, we ask about the price, and lo and behold, it is a couple of $100,000 above our budget. And so we did all the pros and cons. We were like, oh, do we do it? We don't do it. We used our brains, we used our minds to try and process it, but we still couldn't really land on an answer. But I dropped into my heart and I was like, you know what, I want this, and I really trust that everything is going to be just fine. So we ended up signing that contract. And then a few months later, it was time to sell our home in Melbourne. And I remember that day we were like sitting on the stairs inside the house. Everyone's crowded out the front doing the whole auction thing. And we're hearing those bids going up and up. And we're like, oh my gosh, like, come on, sell the house, like we need this. And then they started to go up even beyond our reserve amount, the amount that we, had been told, like, oh, this is what the house is worth. But it kept going and it went up and up. And guess what? When they went bang, like going, gone, it was literally the precise amount that we needed to cover this new home with this like higher budget and so on. And I was like, oh, thank you, universe. Like, what a wonderful way of just showing us that, like, when you can just trust and surrender and drop into that process, like, you will be held and you will be supported. And it goes so much beyond just what our minds are capable of, and more about, what is it that we're really feeling into? What is it that's aligned for us? What is this highest potential, and how can we fully trust that?
Oh my gosh, I got so emotional when you were sharing that story, because I think it's really easy to forget the magic. I think that we get so, I know that I do, I can get so in my head about goals. And actually, when I think about like when we got this house, it's almost unexplainable sometimes. It's when you're less in your head and more just in a state of, this is just going to happen and it's going to work out. And I don't even really understand intellectually how. And I think that that's why it brought up so much emotion for me as you were talking, is because I've realized how much I've been in my head trying to solve problems rather than in that space of intuition, of flow, and of just that deep sense of everything that's going to work out for me. That's such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, and it really is that dropping down from the head into the heart. I think that it actually is one of these key aspects of what we know is that more traditional manifesting is in goal setting, really. Like, you think about what goal you want, you think about all of the things you need to do, and then you start doing them and you go from point A and you'll get to point B. But life's not like that. And it's more when we drop into our heart space, we're opening up this whole field of potentiality that is so much beyond what we know, what's in our conscious mind. We're tapping into a much bigger energetic field that wants us to thrive. It wants us to succeed, but we have to get out of our own way, right? We've got to like stop our mental like thoughts and clutter that keeps like blocking us, and instead just embrace that full expansion and the trusting.
So I'm really curious, if people are listening to this and they're thinking, I've never manifested a house, things don't work out for me. I know that there might be some people listening who are in like an absolute funk, where it feels like nothing's working out for them. Can manifesting work for everyone, or is it only for certain type of people?
Well, I believe that manifesting can work for everyone, and it's actually about adjusting the approach that you have when it comes to manifesting. Because I know it's easy, like, oh man, especially with the social media, right? You get onto social media, oh, she's just bought her dream home, I haven't got a dream home, or oh, look at her, she's doing the Maldives like for the 5th time this month, and we're seeing all this stuff and going, oh, but I don't have that. And so what happens out of that is this feeling of like the not having. And when we tap into that energy of not having, it just feels like not having is everywhere. And so we start to look at our lives and go, oh, well, I haven't got that, I haven't got that. And so it feels kind of miserable. But I really encourage people to step into a space of, well, what do you have? What is feeling so good and aligned to you in this moment? And even if you have like maybe a humble, like little small apartment, and even if you're desiring that big home one day, what is it that is so special and magic about that humble apartment? Maybe it's that you actually got your own space. Maybe that you can create your own little nest in this one corner. So I think manifesting can be really powerful when we start to focus on what we do have, but also what we actually desire, not what everyone else thinks we should have or desire, or what, what looks cool and sexy on Instagram, but actually what is our heart calling for? Because it may not actually be a giant mansion. It might be a complete pain to try and maintain and clean, right? Having lots and lots of rooms in a house. But maybe what you're really desiring is coziness or comfort, or like just your own like little inner space. So then how could you create that in what you do have? How can you start to manifest these things that are actually important to you with what you do have? So I see it as like an adjustment and a realignment. That's why alignment is so important with intuitive manifesting, because it's coming back to what is really true for you. What do you desire at that deep heart level? And then how can you create that in your life?
And how do you know whether something is like, if you know what I mean? Like if something comes up and you go, oh, I don't really feel grateful for it, or I actually really want that other. How do you sort of find the balance between, is this actually in alignment for me, or am I just not going for the big thing that I really desire? What's sort of the balance between those two?
Well, one thing that you can do is just really drop into your own inner space, and that is, you close down your eyes, you drop into a like relaxed state, nice deep breathing, all of the good things, and then just start to visualize what it is that you think that you desire. So maybe you're like, oh, it's a beachfront mansion. Okay, so bring that up in your mind's eye and just start to feel the energy around that. And keep sitting with it until you get to some of those edges, because we'll initially go like, oh yay, beachside mansion, that's awesome. But if we sit with it a little bit more, you go, okay, well, what am I really feeling around it? What's that 360-degree view of having this, and is that really true for me? And then what is underlying that? Is it actually that I am desiring freedom? Is it that I want more nature? And is there a different way that I could actually start to create that? Now, the second thing is I love tarot. So I always love to pull a tarot card around these things. And even like, hang on, I'll just grab my little deck here. Even if it were just to play, like if you go, oh, well, is it the beachfront mansion that's really aligned for me, or is it more like a humble apartment? Well, here we go, like beachfront mansion, we've got the hermit reversed. Well, maybe you actually start to feel a bit lonely and isolated in that big giant house, like, and there's not enough people around. Maybe you like to be around people. And then if you're more in like a humble apartment, well, maybe Page of Swords kind of has that energy of like, maybe there's a new opportunity that emerges from that, because now you've actually probably saved a lot of money and you can direct that money towards something else that lights you up as well. So, tarot can also just help us break through what we are thinking about a situation, and it helps us drop into what we're feeling. So we're back into the heart again, and what's happening on a more subconscious level. That's really the role that intuition plays in this whole process.
And so, question for people that perhaps aren't familiar with tarot, because I know there's a lot of skeptics who are like, well, it's just luck, it's just a random card. How do you feel that plays into the intuitive? Like, what's been your experience? What's your lived experience of using tarot to make decisions? And
Yeah. So, when people go like, oh, do you even really believe it? Isn't it just all made up? You could just pull any card. And I go, well, so what if you could? Like, what if it was all made up? So what? Isn't that interesting though, when you look at this card and then some things come to you and you go, oh yeah, I do feel that kind of adventure spirit when I look at the card. And then it catalyzes something for you, activates something within you. Isn't that the value of what is really happening? Now, of course, I believe that there's so much more to it than just like, oh, it's just randomized, you could get any card and it has a meaning. Sure, that's like level one of understanding how tarot works. But I also believe that, we are drawn to certain cards energetically, and those cards show up for us kind of in this beautiful energetic matrix that we're in. But equally, your intuition, this is why tarot is so powerful. Your intuition will look at that picture on the card and it will start to gravitate towards the symbols or the imagery or the feelings that you get from that card. It's not your conscious mind doing all of the work, it's your subconscious, your intuition going like, for me, I might go like, oh, look, his hair's flowing in the wind. Oh, that feels so freeing. And Claire, you might go like, what do you see? What jumps out
The
to
first
you?
thing I noticed was the sword. I'm like, going for going into battle, going for the things that you want, like that sort of jumped out to me.
Yeah, awesome. See, and this is now tarot at work because it's helping us to access parts of our inner selves that we can't necessarily access through just thinking it and consciously thinking it. So you might go, oh yeah, that sword. Well, maybe there's something about being in an apartment, but that makes me feel like, yeah, I can just go for it in maybe other areas of my life. Or now I only have to decorate one room instead of, 17. This is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's the role that tarot plays for me is it's something that I go, I'm going to go and see if there's a message in there. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. And a lot of times what comes up for me, I'm like, wow, that seemed to play out for me, even though consciously I didn't even think that that was the direction that I was going to go or what was coming up. So it's been really interesting for me exploring the world of tarot. And I have to say, obviously, every time I'm looking at my tarot cards, I always intentionally put in Biddy Tarot because I love the way that you explain the cards. It's interesting, actually, since we're on the topic of tarot, which funnily enough was the next question I was going to ask you. I was going to say, what role does tarot play in your intuitive manifesting process? But I went to pull a card before our chat today. And this was the card that came up is Judgment. And I thought, what an interesting card to pull. And three other cards. This is something else. If you are familiar with tarot, you'll know sometimes the cards just do their own thing. Like I had three cards that jumped out of my hand. They literally fell out. I was holding the cards and I'm like, these three cards have all popped out. And interestingly, we've got the 10 of Wands, the 9 of Wands, and the 3 of Swords all jumped out. So yeah, would you like to share what insight that might have had about our conversation today?
Would you like to share? What do you see? Because they're your cards. This is the thing. Like, I actually do really believe in like when we pull cards, they're messages for us. And there's not like, yes, there are all these like traditional meanings of the cards. There are some kind of like right meanings, but ultimately though, where we get the true magic from the cards is when we use our own intuition to go, what's showing up for me in these cards? So I don't, when you look at those three cards and then the judgment, what's leaping out for you?
Well, it's interesting because when I see the word judgment, I instantly thought negative connotations. That was my first. I'm like, oh my gosh, Bridget's going to be judging me. And then I looked a bit deeper and I actually realized it kind of was almost a bit of a celebration or it almost made me think of in the Bible, like Judgment Day, when like you're coming to this new, like, ta-da, this is what's coming next. So that's sort of my take on that judgment card. I'm
Yeah,
curious.
well, that's so interesting too, then with the other three cards, because have a look at those three cards. What, like, if you were to look at it as a whole picture, what's kind of your feeling from those three cards?
So these are the cards to me. So I've got the 10 of Wands, the 9 of Wands, and the 3 of Swords. These all look very, I guess I just wouldn't say they feel very light. They feel quite heavy. Like it looks like he's carrying this big, heavy load. This guy looks a bit miserable. He's got a bandage on his head. He's been at war. He's kind of getting a bit over it. These swords are stabbed through a heart. Looks like broken hearts. It looks like there's just been a lot of torment, heaviness, torture going on. And then this one is like, I don't know, this is where it was and this is where it's going, maybe.
Yeah. So, well, it's interesting to contrast that with like your initial thought with the judgment was like, oh, is Bridget going to judge me or whatever it might be. And that is kind of reflected in those three cards as well, kind of feeling a heavy load, the heartbreak, the like just sort of being maybe being in a little bit more of a fragile state, you know. And as we record this, we're in an eclipse season. We're in between like two eclipses, and this can sometimes be quite a fragile time. And so maybe it's reflecting some of that. And then that judgment is like the how do you rise up like through that? How do we turn this kind of negative self-talk into something that is actually an epiphany, a breakthrough, a new realization? And if I kind of bring that back into the place of intuitive manifesting, I think this is really interesting how it plays out in the manifesting journey, because we can go through these times where we just kind of like beat up on ourselves. Oh, I haven't manifested the thing I wanted. It's not happening fast enough. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I'm not worthy of this. You know, all of this like self-talk is just naturally comes up. Doesn't even matter if you're the best manifester in the world and you can manifest like crazy. This stuff comes up, and it's really about what you do with it that makes the biggest difference. And that is that judgment card. So how do we kind of rise up these, like it's basically these dead people are rising up out of their graves, and they're, you know, being called to the angel above, which is this whole, like, how do I see things from a very different perspective? And so with intuitive manifesting, it comes down to like releasing these negative beliefs, these limiting beliefs that often block us, get us in the way, and then helping to reshape them into something that is more affirming and more positive. Tarot is really great for that. Let's just run an example. Like, okay, Claire, can you just give me like, what's a goal right now, a dream, a wish that you would are in the process of manifesting?
Building the dream house. We've got the dream block. I want to build the dream house here.
All right. And so we're just playing, okay? It's all hypothetical. So let's just say we go, all right, Tarot, what's blocking Claire from this, like really being able to embrace this vision? Oh, interesting. The lovers.
Ooh.
And so tell me when you see this, what, like, if you're tapping into anything that might be blocking your energy around building the dream house, what do you see? What comes through to you?
I don't know. It was just so funny that I like went money, and I'm like, what? Like, is this something that I'm like, my husband should be earning more money, or I don't know.
Interesting. And, you know, like the lovers is very much about like duality and polarity and being able to harmonize and blend, like harmonize the feminine and the masculine, but also maybe harmonize some different approaches to maybe money, or being able to come and create perhaps more of a shared vision together for this dream home. Like, where is it that you need to create more connection and see more eye to eye as a unified, you know, front when it comes to building this dream home? So what's neat is it starts to just shine a light of awareness on part of yourself that might be blocking that dream from really coming true. And you know, you can sit with this and might go, oh, that's nice, but nah, that's not relevant for me. That's okay, that's your choice. Or you could go, wow, actually that is making me think about X, Y, and Z. And maybe you might spend a bit of time like going into that and exploring it a little bit more. That's the power of tarot, in that it helps us to just go that much deeper beyond just like, oh, what do I think is blocking me? Oh, you know, might be like, I just think I don't have enough money or something. But tarot helps us to go, well, actually, what is it around maybe shared vision or your partnership that is part of that?
So let's take that to the next step further. If people are listening and, you know, you've used that one example, if you are feeling stuck, you can use tarot as a tool. But what are the big ways that people are unintentionally blocking their manifestations from coming to fruition?
Yeah, we spoke to one which is around like focusing on what you don't have instead of what you do have, because you know, like attracts like. So if you're always just focused on like the gap and we don't have it yet, then like it kind of puts a dampener on everything and you just get more of it. So that's not a great strategy. But other things that often block, I hear it a lot around this, like the worthiness, and you probably hear it too, particularly when it comes to like money. we think like, yeah, actually, oh, I really do desire that, increased pay or income through my business. And then something kicks in and we go, oh my God, am I actually worthy of that? Oh my gosh, am I being greedy if I have that goal? Like, and it does that mean that people are going to lose out because I'm going to be like, I'm winning? Or like, oh, and so all of this stuff comes up and it can unintentionally kind of sabotage the efforts. I've seen it show up where I know in my own path, it shows up for me when then I start thinking, okay, well, maybe I have to give all this money away. I'll give it away to all these people and that'll help me feel better. And then I'll just have a smaller amount and then I'll be okay. I'm like, hang on a second, what am I doing here? So, yeah, I think that worthiness shows up a lot. Tell me, like, do you see this as well in your community where that shows up?
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's the funny thing is, as you're talking as well, is I realize that as someone who teaches mindset manifestation myself, I still have all of this stuff that comes up for me. I'm sure you do at times too, Bridget. And I think that sometimes people think that once you get to a certain level, that it's all just easy or the fears or it, but so much of this still comes up for me as well. So yes, I witness it in my community with my clients, and equally, I witness it in myself. And it's funny sometimes when you're mentoring people, it's so obvious to see it in someone else. And it's a lot harder to see it in your own stuff. But yeah, that totally resonates. And I love that you have shared that, because I think that this is something that comes up a lot for people when they are trying to create new things in their life. Thank you for sharing.
And I just wanted to add to it too is like when you hear yourself saying something negative or this negative self-talk, again, you've got a choice. You can go like, oh my God, am I going into this negative self-talk again? Like you can beat yourself up for beating yourself up, right? This negative spiral. Or you can go, oh, fantastic, I found another one. And then you go, brilliant, I found where my edge is. This is a great sign that I'm expanding, I'm hitting those edges of my comfort zone. And two, now I've got something to actively work on and to release so that I can continue to allow this flow to happen. So anytime I hear myself going like, oh, I don't deserve this, or like whatever it might be, I go, all right, great. Let's really drop into that. Of course, I get my cards out, but even just doing some journaling around it, going, okay, what's really underneath this? What is it that I need to liberate myself from? What is it that I'm actually calling in here? What's my true intention? Forget all this noise that I've put around it. What am I actually wanting to do to move forward? And again, this is like the essence of really tapping into your intuition as part of the whole manifesting process.
I love any other things that you find, any other ways that you see people are unintentionally blocking themselves from manifesting what they want?
It's probably like the shiny object syndrome of, almost like the boredom or expecting that things will just happen like bang, 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 like magic. And then when they don't, you go, oh, no, okay, push that one away. All right, what else? But it's kind of like, I imagine it as if you're at a restaurant and the waiter's brought out the menu, you've looked at the menu, you've chosen your dinner, and you call over the waiter and you say, yeah, I'll have the steak. Not that I would order the steak, and I'll have the soup, thanks. And then just as the waiter starts walking away, he always goes to put it in at the kitchen. You go, oh no, hang on, actually, no, I'm going to have the chicken. And then he starts, you go, okay, yes, of course. And then starts to put your order in. No, actually, no, I'm going to have the pasta now. No, yeah, no, change my mind. Like you'd be kicked out of that restaurant. And so it's the same, like when we keep trying to change what it is that we want, we're not really being clear in our intention and our alignment to what it is that we're calling in. So I think it's that really just trusting, like, okay, if this is the thing that I truly desire, I can hold that energy, over time while it starts to manifest. Usually things that like you kind of call it in and you go, oh, I don't really want that. And you push it out. You didn't really want it in the first place. So that's why getting really clear about what are your true desires, what's really in alignment for you. Like that's the key to having those more sustainable goals that you can manifest.
Mm. So I'm hearing patience is a big tool that people need when it comes to manifesting. And it's fun as well. Sometimes I think when you're in something, it feels like it's going forever. I know, I was single for a long time and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why hasn't he come along? And then now I'm like, oh yeah, I would have waited another 5 years if I had to. It was worth the
Yeah.
wait. And sometimes I think when you're in it, you're like, why hasn't the thing happened yet? And then you look back later and you go, well, it was only, even getting this house from when I first set the intention to when we got it was 2 to 3 years, which really, in the big scheme of life, is not very long at all. But at the time, I'm like, why is it not happening? And it was only when I truly did all of those things that you mentioned, like release the energy around it, when I started being grateful for where I was, what I had, stop being idolizing the goal, thinking that everything would be happy then, that it actually is when it manifested.
Yeah, yeah, that's something I talk about in the book is this whole idea of, yeah, patience, trust, surrendering to that process. One of the things that I've done after many lessons, life lessons, is I've set this intention because I'm an ideas person, I'm visionary, I have a lot of ideas, I run with them, I make them happen pretty fast. But sometimes I've found myself bringing in an idea and then go, okay, I really want it. And I'd force, I push, I strive, trying to get it. And it'll be clunky and not happen. And then I'd get frustrated. Oh, why is it not happening? And then I realized like I was trying to force it into a particular timeline, my timeline, not the universe's timeline. And we know that doesn't always work. So I set a new intention. I was like, okay, I'm going to call in a desire or an idea. I'll play with it. I'll give it a little bit of energy. I'll see where it wants to go. And then instead of like running with it, I'm going to push it back out into the ether, into my bubble. And only when it is 100% ripe and ready to go, then bring it back to me. But until then, leave it out there until let it get ripe. It's just like a fruit tree, right? So you don't go and pick that green, hard peach because it's not even like a peach. It's horrible. It's bitter. You can try and like put it in the sun, but always have that hard core inside. And, it might look like a peach on the outside, but it still doesn't taste so good. But if you leave it on the tree, then when it's finally ripe and you go to pick it, it is juicy, it is lush, it is so delicious. And I really think that's the same with our goals and our desires and our ideas is just call them in, see them, then let them go, do their thing, and then they'll come to you when it's actually ripe and ready instead of trying to force and hustle and grind and, all of the things. Yeah.
I love that. So I'm really curious to know, having just gone through the process of creating a book around manifestation, what are the biggest things that Brigit wants to manifest in her life?
Oh gosh, that's a big question. Do you know, I've found myself moving more towards like the feelings that I want to manifest rather than the things. I have an amazing life. I'm deeply grateful for what I've already manifested. And then what I think that I'm actually calling in is freedom. I love freedom. Definitely travel as soon as the kids are like ready to look after themselves. I know I'm on a plane indefinitely. But also, the other really big thing for me is being fully expressed in whatever form that means, and really to trust in this whole authentic self and to step into whatever this full version of Bridget is. It's always growing, it's always expanding, but just to keep stepping in with courage, with strength, with curiosity, and yeah, just invite in whatever is unfolding. It's very different. If you spoke to me maybe 5, 10 years ago, I'd go to you, well, I'm manifesting $1 million business and I'm going to have these number of courses and, so on and so forth, very black and white. And now I've learned to be more in this more fluid space where it is like, I will welcome in anything that creates more freedom, more expression, and more flow. Whereas before it was more finite. I want this, I want that.
And do you think that's been an evolution of your own manifesting journey?
Yeah, 100%. I think that is, and that is, me also stepping into my full expression is learning how to recondition my mind because I believe like I came up through corporate, worked in corporate for 15 years, did very well like with school, with university, and all of that conditions you to think in a certain way. and that success comes through hard work, grit, determination. And yes, I do still believe in that. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, just wish it will come. It's not like that. But yeah, I've found that actually there's a perfect balance in between. There is that side of, having that resilience, that determination, but there's also the other side, which is more flow, more ease, more trust, more surrender, and finding that place just in the middle that really, yeah, just helps to accelerate things in just the right way.
I love that. Oh, how beautiful. One last question that I wanted to share with the listeners before we wrap up, which is, what is your biggest manifesting tip for people?
Oh gosh, I really do. I think it does come back to intuition, because I fundamentally believe this has been a missing ingredient in a lot of the manifesting conversations that have been around. Again, so often we're calibrating to something that's outside of ourselves. We're calibrating to what people show on their social media feed, what people think is successful. But what we're forgetting is what is actually successful for us. And that's going to look different for every one of us. And it might look really like, oh, is that just small and pathetic that I just like, want this little thing? Like my daughter Chloe, she's 15, and I go, oh, what do you dream of when you like leave home at 18? Where do you want to go from there? And she's like, oh, I just want a small apartment. I'm like, what? Is that it? You only want a small apartment? She's like, yes, like it's just nice and little. I'm like, huh, yeah, actually, that's pretty great, because that is like the essence of choosing something that feels good to you and not just what you think will look great on social media. So where that all comes back to is just really listening into the intuition, calibrating within this inner wisdom that we have inside of ourselves, rather than always calibrating outside of ourselves, because that is really where all of this wisdom, all of this knowledge, this deep knowing it's in here. That's all.
Oh, I love that. What a beautiful way to wrap up today's conversation. People are listening to this and itching to get their hands on intuitive manifesting, like me. How can they do so?
Yeah, so intuitive manifesting will be sold where all good books are sold, Amazon, or you can also come on over to Biddy Tarot. So if you go to biddytarot.com/pre-order now, and you'll find all of the different places that the intuitive manifesting book is sold.
Beautiful. Well, I will pop a link in the show notes for today's episode. Brigit, it's always such a pleasure. Thank you for coming on the podcast today. And I am sure you've got another best-selling book on your hands right here.
Oh,
Thanks for
thank you,
joining us.
Claire. Thanks for all the magic you bring to the world.
Thank you.